Hi, this video is to install a Eonon GA6180F unit. This is going into a 2010 Buick Enclave CXL, and I believe this unit will fit into most GM SUVs that are either a Traverse, Acadia, or an Enclave. So what I've got right now is the install already happened, but I want to go back and review kind of what took place to get to this point. First thing you have to do is pop this bezel off right here. The kit comes with a trim tool, and you slide it up underneath where it goes in along here into these clips, and you just kind of pry it up. Now I lost my trim tool, but what I found is I could use my fingers if I start at this top edge and slowly work it out. Once you get this unit off, you'll see a lot of wires back here. I didn't need to disconnect them at all. I just kind of moved it out of the way. And in the old original OE head unit, there are 4 screws that are 1, 2, and the same ones over there, and those come out with the socket. At that point, you're ready to pull your OE unit out, which basically looks like this. So the issue I had with this unit is, it showed its age in the sense that the screen wasn't very clear, the nav worked intermittently, and it was just time for an upgrade. This is the part number in this Buick, and on the back of this I just want to review kind of what was hooked up. So there were basically a GPS antenna here that came off that'll go connect to the new Eonon unit. This was the radio antenna, fat black wire. There are 2 connectors here and here, 2 more here and here, and basically these are black. So the sister connector that goes into these pins is black in the OE wire harness. This one is a gray one, and this one was a brown one. And this one will create an issue potentially. I'll talk more about that later with the Eonon. Then here, I'm not quite sure what plugged into here, but it appears to function the USB powered supply that was in the glove box, because when I disconnected this unit, there was nothing for the Eonon to connect where this connector went in. And what I noticed, the only thing that didn't work after I hooked it back up was the USB, original OEM port in the glove box. But the Eonon unit does have a couple USB ports, so it's not an issue. The one thing to note here, these 2 in the wire harness appear to control audio. This one appears to control video, the gray one. And there's a brown one if you have this style unit. And in my original head unit here, when I went into reverse, the camera would feed only through the head unit display. I did not have a rear view camera up in the rear view mirror. So the camera only showed through this head unit. And the issue that I had is when I connected the Eonon unit, everything worked like it was supposed to, including all the buttons on the steering wheel control. I have the DVD system in my Enclave. Everything worked fine except the rear camera. And there's one issue. Eonon has connectors in their harness that'll go here, here, and here. So audio, and video. But there was nothing to go to the brown connector. And this brown connector in the OE wire harness, which I'll show you in a minute, is a vehicle speed sensor, meaning what it did is it controlled the user operating the nav when you were driving, but it also contained the camera feed. And because Eonon had nothing to connect to this, there was no camera signal that made it into the new Eonon nav unit. But I have a workaround for that. So here, let's go back now to the Eonon unit. I'd never done one of these before, so it was a little bit intimidating at first when you pull it out and there's wires everywhere, but it's actually pretty straightforward. And my hope is with this video, people that want to try to install this, you'll have a tip, to solve this rear camera issue if you run into it. But overall, I've been very pleased with the unit. I haven't had any issues with it, and it was a fairly easy install. So I'm going to pull it out because I've got it, the trim piece off here, out of the way, the bezel. I've got my screws out, my bolts out, and as I pull this out, you're going to see a whole bunch of wires. But like I said before, it looks worse than it really is. All right, let me move the nav unit out of the way. I'm going to talk through the connectors here. So in the back of the Eonon unit, you've got basically your radio wire, This is a Wi-Fi antenna, so I actually pick up my Wi-Fi in my house, which is helpful for downloading apps. You got a GPS antenna right here. This guy here connects into the main wire harness, and then there are a couple other connectors. When I talked about earlier, you see a couple other connectors that there aren't very good instructions that come with this unit, but basically this is the camera. This is some of the inputs for audio, I believe it is. But basically, if you look at the picture, they give you a picture with this unit, and you can kind of see where what to plug in where. And one thing I did before I even tried to get into the OE wire harness is there are a lot of RCA connections. And so basically, this is kind of hard to do with one hand. But basically, if you follow kind of these gray wires here going from the Eonon, you'll see some of these come out here. Like, for example, you know, video out goes over here, and it connects to this gray harness. And this is actually what I was talking about, one of the gray harnesses here. So this is going to the OE. This used to plug into the back of the original GM head unit. This connector here comes with the Eonon wire harness, so it goes gray to gray. So there's one here you have to connect. There's a black one to connect as well. There are two black ones actually. So again, this went into when I was talking earlier about the back of the OE unit, this went into one of the black ones. This connects from the Eonon. This is the Eonon harness, and these are keyed. By that I mean the way that the connectors slide together, so that you can't reverse these black ones. They only go in a certain sequence. And then the third one, if I can grab it down here, is this guy. So that's the third connector, and again, OE wire harness to the black Eonon wire harness. So you basically got three. You're going to use three connectors. Now here's what happened. When I talked about the brown connector in the OE unit, what I had to do here is basically create like an RCA cable. And the thing to know about this, if you see that pink and blue wire there, that's in pins position 6 and 7. And basically, if you looked at the front of it, this is like an 8-pin connector. It's a little hard to see, but if you, as shown on here, it's not the first one on the top left, it's the second one. That's where the blue runs. Blue is negative, and the pink wire is positive. And basically, if you follow this, what I had to do to get this to work is first of all, what I did is I just went on Amazon and I bought a pin. This, you know, a little kit cost about $5. But basically, I took a pin. I had some wire in the house, and I basically crimped it on and created a pin. And I'll tape this up later. And then what I did is I ran this wire, and I bought, again, this little RCA, and this is a male. And basically you can buy this, again, a pack of these for like $5 on Amazon. And so I've got my negative going into my negative and positive to positive. You plug that in, and what this is doing in the Eonon, what it's going to try to ask you to do is it's going to have something called camera in, and it's going to want to take an RCA jack over here, which is called video out, and the video out's running over into this gray one right here. But that's a problem because the camera signal doesn't go to this one in the OE wire harness here. It goes into this one, and that's why we needed to get the camera feed and override it. And I contacted Eonon, but they don't have a fix for this. So if you want your rear camera to work, this is basically what you're going to need to do. If you have your camera in your rear view mirror, you may not have this issue. It just would be that you couldn't see your rear view camera through the Eonon unit. Hopefully that makes sense, but that's kind of the key step. Otherwise, it's a pretty straightforward install, because you basically get these connectors to your OE, your two blacks and your gray. You connect your radio and your GPS, and that's basically it that goes into the OE side. And then what you have going on down here, this happens with within the OE wire, or not the OE, but the Eonon one. So for example, you would make these connections before you even started, you know, disassembling or trying to get at, you know, the whatever nav unit you have in right now, like the GM one. And there's just basically connecting stuff from the decoder and basically going into the back here. That's what these do. But you know, these gray ones come out, so you've got some. This is auxiliary. Basically, it's audio, like left in going to left out, right in to right out, and then you've got a couple more here. So these you can connect before you even get started, because you're going to get a big wire harness with this where you can make some of these connections. start to plug stuff in back here, and then when you get into it, you're basically only going to have to connect again the 3 harnesses for your rear camera, your GPS antenna, and your radio antenna. And once you do that, you should be good to go. When I found, I won't put it back in just to save time on the video. When I put this back in, it was a much better fit. I think it's shorter than the OE unit. And so I didn't have, even though this looks like a whole bunch of stuff back in here, I didn't have any issues getting this back in. And what you can see is a couple of wires in the background. What I ended up doing is I have this kind of a style, I guess you'd call it a sunglasses holder, whatever, in the dash. What's up in here though is I put it comes with a speaker as well as a GPS antenna. This guy's the GPS right over here. And there, right behind here, there's where this latch is right here. There's a little hole, and I was able to thread the wires, and they just basically fall down through, and it made a nice kind of easy thing to connect. So I've got a good GPS position. I got the microphone. I'm actually going to, or not the microphone, but the speaker. What this speaker does though is it controls, like, you open the door, start the car. It's like warning chimes, turn signal, tick-tocks. But it is, and it's also your, when you back up and you have a backup sensor, this will chime if you're getting close to something. This thing is super loud, to the point is it's really annoying. There's no volume control on it, so I would, unfortunately, that's just the way it is. So I'll either tape it up, or frankly, I'm just going to disconnect it, because it's not worth the headache, even at the expense of losing the backup sensor. One last thing to show you on the USB side, the way I did this. If you look at this right down here, you can see to the left of the USB ports, there's a little microphone that's supposed to help with kind of like Bluetooth talking, or not Bluetooth, but just like mobile phone talking. And then my USB ports. And the way I did that is, you know, I pulled out this panel here, which is basically... It comes out of the cup holders. This piece of trim will just pop out if you start it from the back. You know, it'll just kind of pop up and out. Once you get this off, you've got 2 screws under here where all these buttons are that are basically mounting that. And all I had to do was loosen those 2 screws in order to basically take my Dremel tool and make a little hole so I could just feed those USB cables to. But those USB cables run around through the back here and basically come up the back side here. You can kind of see them going down through there, and they will connect into this wire harness as well, and that's pretty straightforward in the directions. So hope that helps. And the camera issue is a good workaround. Again, I chose to do it this way because I didn't want to splice into the harness itself. I just thought this was easier, just to kind of pin out of the current connector. And I did just test it now, and it works. The surprising thing is just how bad of an image the camera is when you see it on a high-def screen like this, but it did work. All right, good luck.